All right, welcome back to Inside College Basketball Now with Jon Rothstein. Pleased to be joined by Duke head coach Jon Scheyer. Jon, welcome. What's the vacation spot for the Shires in the summer of 2025?
Man, the main thing for us, John, is to get a little time back in Chicago. That's where my family's at. My wife's family is there as well. So going to try to catch a Cubs game, spend some time with the fam, and get right back to it in Durham.
What is the Jon Scheyer go-to restaurant when he gets home to the Windy City?
Well, Illuminati's, man, for me, deep dish pizza to get some loos. Gotta get a Chicago style hot dog, Italian beef sandwich, a few different spots I go to. But Illuminati's is the one for sure. We got to hit.
Now, you definitely remind me of the type of person who can eat whatever he wants and never gain any weight. I usually don't have a lot of tolerance for people like that, but I do like you. What's the most amount of slices of deep dish that you have ever had in your life in one sitting?
John, you're not going to like this answer, but I've taken down a full, large deep dish pizza before. So
that's incredible.
I'm not sure if I should be proud of that, but there's been moments. I can eat now. I can eat.
Well, in 2007, I had 5 in one sitting at Giordano's, and then I had to tap out. But, Jon, in all seriousness, how hard is it to balance being Duke's head coach when you have a young family?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's for me, it's the biggest challenge that I have. I mean, not close. These years go by fast. I know for me, I was fortunate. My dad would work long hours. He'd be out of the house at 5 in the morning and come back sometimes at 7 o'clock at night. But I remember those moments. He'd always be present when he walked through the door. And you will know this job doesn't end when you walk through the door at home. There's everything from recruiting to practice planning to just keeping up with your guys. It's nonstop. And so trying to find some level of being present and then being the best that I can be wherever I am, that's been a challenge. I think I'm getting better at it. But I think I got a long way to go at the same time.
Now, you were an assistant coach at Duke before you became the head coach a couple of years ago. How much have the time commitments amplified as you made that switch and transition?
I think the biggest difference, John, is just the fact that, like my wife and I, we got married in May. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's no way you can get married in May now. I mean, I know don't you say we sleep in May or
that's the tagline.
We don't sleep in May. We're recruiting in May, so I think just the year-round job that it's become from a recruiting standpoint, we sleep for a month in August should be the tagline. I think that can be the tagline, but I don't know if it's we sleep in May anymore, just for my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Jon, what's the biggest thing you know now about being Duke's head coach that you didn't know when you were an assistant?
I just think the level of responsibility that you feel and then the level of constant evolving and adapting that you have to do. I think I learned that especially from year 1 to year 2. Some things that worked really well for us at the end of the season, we came back and did that same thing in the beginning of year 2 and wasn't working. It's not like I wasn't, teaching it as well, but it's a different group and teams are playing you differently. And so staying ahead, continuing to evolve, I think that's the biggest thing when you think about the fact you're always trying to create sustained success here. And you can't do that by just staying the same. And that's something that I felt my first 3 seasons and now going into year 4.
Jon, anytime in sports we see somebody follow a legend, it doesn't always work out. But, it really, since you've taken over Duke's program, it's looked seamless. How do you think you've embraced what Coach K taught you as a player and when you worked for him while also integrating your own philosophies?
I saw something where in Jim Collins' book where they talked about preserving the core, like preserving the core of meaning the values and what the program is all about. Those things can never change. But then having the ability to adapt what I was talking about earlier with NIL, with roster construction, with teaching and coaching and connecting with players, you always have to be heard this somewhere where you have to change. Sometimes the best time to change is when you're on top or close to the top. And I think for us in studying Coach K and being around him all the time, he was never afraid to change. And so I think
Right.
we've kept that, preserving the core mentality while also continuing to build on what we've done in a different way, which you have to do in college basketball in 2025.
Now, what are the biggest things from Coach K that you still implement on a daily basis within Duke's program?
First and foremost, it's just the mindset and the ability to be dependable every single day. That's something, I learned very on in my time at Duke. Yeah, you may have a day where you come in and you're great, but the special ones, they do it every day. They're consistent every day with their approach, their work ethic, their energy. And that's something that I try to, of course, demonstrate, and everybody in our program does as well. And then I think the ability to look yourself in the mirror, uh, always push yourself to become better, always look at yourself with whether it's after a game, with maybe it's something I didn't feel I did as well. But I know that Coach K would always look at himself first before looking at anybody else. And that's something I think is really important and a great lesson that I've learned.
John, you've only been a head coach for 3 years, but obviously it's been 3 great years for Duke. And we know what the bar is at Duke. You know what the bar is. You were a player there before you joined the staff. But for you as a young head coach, how interesting was it just to experience the feeling of getting to a Final Four so soon in your coaching career when you beat Alabama?
Well, you know what? That's something I don't take for granted. I learned very early on, John. I mean, that's the promised land.
Yeah.
Final Four. That's promised land to be able to get there. The thing that's the crazy part, though, being in this seat for me was exciting and an amazing opportunity, but you're far from satisfied. I mean, I felt with every ounce in me that I had, and I know our team felt the same way, that we were supposed to win or we are going to win. And that's, I think, the mindset that you want, that you feel you have a team that isn't just happy to be there, but that also feels that they can be deserving of a national championship. And so for me, I've taken really every step of my high school career, my college playing career, and the same thing with my head coaching career. It's been a step at a time until we finally get there. And I'm determined to do that. I know our team is as well. And I'm proud of what we've done, but obviously that's something that leaves you really motivated to continue to build and get back there and take it a step further.
You were in the Final Four, as a player when you won a national championship. And I remember in 2010, you guys won an epic game over Baylor in the Elite Eight to get there. And you've obviously been in the Elite Eight as an assistant coach and as a head coach. How different is it participating in that game? Because if you win on the other side is a trip to the Final Four.
Yeah, you're talking about as now, or you're talking about when I was a player?
Just in general, when, in terms of the being in the Elite Eight because of what's at stake.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. To me, I've lost some heartbreakers in the Elite Eight as a coach or as a player, and we've won some big time games in the Elite Eight as well. In my experience, I think it's the hardest game because you're playing against another team that has won at least three games in a row. They have great momentum. Yeah. Obviously, any team in the Elite Eight is really good also, but there's so much at stake, right? Because there is a difference of getting that Final Four versus losing there. And so that's why, you talk about the value of every possession. The value of every possession in an Elite Eight game is critical. And so I felt that. I think we felt that as a program after losing NC State the year before. I thought we were really well prepared, our staff, our program, our players, after being in a couple of those moments and coming up short. You learn that feeling even more. But yeah, it's there's a difference, no doubt about it.
The win over Alabama gave you a chance to go to the Final Four as a head coach, and you can't win a national championship unless you go, to the Final Four. That was a professional high. And then 7 days later, You have the difficult loss to Houston in the national semifinals. I'm curious, after that game, what did you tell your players in the locker room?
Uh, the Houston game you're talking, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, just that I love them, and just that, I'm sorry because I told them I didn't feel I helped them enough down the stretch. And they literally, John, did everything we asked of them. They
right.
just, in terms of uh, their effort, their approach every single day, that doesn't mean there's not mistakes during the course of a game. Of course there are. That's part of basketball. But man, they were a special group for me to coach. And you don't when you're dreaming about, man, the season and you're thinking about how you want it to end, you don't think about it ending in that way. And that's part of the beauty, of college basketball. I'm sure was celebrating in the other locker room versus how we were in our locker room, right? And we've been
Yeah.
fortunate to be in the locker room celebrating a lot of the time. But that was our moment of just going through that. And so I felt horrible for our players. They did everything to put us in a position to play for the national championship game. And really, for me, it was just all about gratitude, all about my gratitude for allowing me to coach them and taking us on just an incredible season the entire year.
John, I remember talking to you a couple years ago, and you told me that it was a transition for you as you went from a player to a coach to not have as much control over the game because as a player, especially your last year in college, you had complete control over the game. How do the difficult losses for you personally compare as a coach to when you were a player?
Well, you look, I felt that game as deeply as I felt any game in my life. I don't care, player, coach. You feel actually in a lot of respects way more responsibility when you're the head coach, even though you don't have the ball in your hands down the stretch or throughout the course of a game.
Yeah.
You feel like you're responsible for every decision that's made on the floor. I think that's how any great coach thinks or feels and takes ownership over. So for me, um, you know, you understand that there are things that happen on the court that necessarily you don't have a direct impact all the time. But
Right.
as a competitor, as a teacher, you want to control as much of that and help your players as much as possible. And
Right.
so I feel it very deeply. I think there's always ways I can help our guys more and figuring out how to do that as a staff and how to be prepared for any moment. Um, but yeah, you feel it, man. No question about it.
You obviously ended your college career winning a national championship. And then after college, you had your career cut short because, you had an eye injury. And that was an adverse situation that I'm sure turned into a great springboard for you as you started your second career in coaching. As you look now at the players who had to endure that loss against Houston, did your own experience of dealing with adversity help in some ways message to them that this could be the incubator of a great turnaround for some of you?
You know, I don't think I didn't look at it that way in that moment because that was the end of a special group and a special season. And sometimes you have moments where, there's not a silver lining or there's in that moment, it sucks. I wish there was a better way to put it, but just to be there for our guys. It wasn't about telling them that they're going to be great someday or they're because yeah, they will be. I mean, you look at the NBA draft, you look at our guys coming back. I think we have a lot of our guys will carry that with them going forward, and it definitely will help them. But in that moment, I think it's important to just address it, face it head on, call it for what it is. And of course, in time, you grow to learn from it, you grow to build from it, while understanding that it may hurt. It may hurt for a while, like it may hurt for a long time, and that's okay because that's part of what life throws at you.
In your own personal journey, did you learn more about life after being an All American and winning a national championship or having your basketball career cut short due to an injury?
Yeah, you learn way more, or I've learned way more in those moments where things don't go the way you had hoped, or planned. going undrafted. I got mono during the pre-draft process, and I'll tell
Yeah.
you what, that was not a fun thing. Uh, Being in a hospital bed in Chicago, being flown back from Vegas instead of playing in summer league with the Miami Heat, hoping to play with LeBron, D Wade, and Chris Bosh.
Yeah.
I couldn't have imagined being there. I never missed a game or a practice in
Right.
my life up until that moment, and so I learned a lot. Uh, and when basketball was all I knew, I lived it every single day. So all of a sudden you think about, man, your vision. You don't wake up and say, or I didn't, at least I didn't wake up and say, man, I'm grateful I could see today. I'm grateful for my vision.
Yeah.
And so it puts things in perspective. And as difficult as that moment was, or any loss, we could talk about, uh, you know, being a father, being, a husband, our health, our, fulfillment in life. I mean, those things can't be taken for granted.
When your playing career was cut short, did you know immediately that you wanted to coach? Was that part of the plan in your head?
So I actually knew I wanted to coach before that. I just thought I'd be coaching at age 37
Right.
after playing a 15-year NBA career, winning 6 championships with the Chicago Bulls and all the things I planned on
Yeah.
doing. Uh, I thought it'd be down the line. I knew I wanted to coach or maybe teach. I want to be a high school history teacher at one point. And so for me, I was proud of the professional career I had. Played for Houston Rockets G League team, Rio Grande Valley Vipers, Israel, Spain. Went to training camp with the Los Angeles Clippers. But ultimately, in my heart, I just felt there was time to get into coaching. And then to get the opportunity at age 25, I'm thankful for Coach K. And then I learned a lot, man, from Steve Wojciechowski, Jeff Capel, Chris Collins, and I are as close as could be. Johnny Dawkins, I played for as a player. I've been fortunate to be around great coaches, great people. I played for Chris Finch in the G
Yeah.
League. To be able to take great coaching and be around great people, I think allowed me to see that you can do it differently and then really be authentic and then go for it. And so here we are now.
What was the genesis of Coach K, bringing you aboard as an assistant at Duke when your playing career was done?
Well, the true story is Chris Collins called me first. He thought he was getting the Northwestern job. Me
Yeah.
and him would talk all the time. And he said he wanted to bring me on staff. And naturally, any big decision you make in life when you play for Coach K he's the godfather.
Yeah.
You want to call and see what he thinks. And I remember calling Coach and him hearing this idea about me going to Northwestern. And he said, look, what are you? And I think he called me an idiot. Actually, I think he said, if you're going to coach, you better come back home. You better come back to Duke. And I said,
Right.
well, I didn't think about that being an option. And so really it's a pretty cool thing. The fact that Chris Collins, who's a big brother to me, going to the same high school, his opportunity at Northwestern led to an opportunity for me to get into coaching at Duke. And so how special is that? And then obviously the next year, Wojo gets the Marquette job.
Yeah.
I'm able to move up on the road and recruit. And the first guy I ever saw in a gym recruiting was Luke Kennard and Jason Tatum. That was my first 5 minutes on the road. I saw those 2 guys. And so, again, a lot of this is timing, opportunity, and then, of course, being ready for that opportunity when your number's called. So I'm really grateful for Coach in that moment to give me that chance. And then for Chris to open up that spot and to get me thinking about coaching.
John, it's amazing because your last year at Duke as a player, you won a national championship. And your first year at Duke as an assistant full-time, you won a national championship. Was it almost like the years you guys weren't in the Final Four or going to a Sweet 16 or something like that? Was it almost like surreal to think that the tournament was going on some years and you guys weren't a part of it?
Yeah, what's crazy? I promise I'll never take that for granted because my first 2 years we didn't go to a Sweet 16.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you remember, we lost to VCU and then we got upset by West Virginia the next year in the second round. We almost got upset by Belmont.
I remember.
Belmont is a 1-point game, and thank God for my roommate Gerald Henderson.
Yeah.
want to lay the ball up in a close game. But I learned very quickly, right away, how difficult the tournament can be, how unpredictable it can be, and you really have to take it not just one game at a time, one possession at a time. So for us, obviously we have a goal each year to make a deep run in the tournament, and you need some fortune on your side. You need some health. You need some. You need to play well. You need to be well prepared. You need to be connected. But I'll never take for granted advancing in the tournament because I felt what it's like. My first year back on staff, we lost to Mercer.
Yeah.
So we win the national championship, but the year before, we weren't even playing the second game of the tournament. And so we've seen both sides. I've seen every side you could see, which I think humbles you, but also makes you appreciate it when you can make a deep run even more.
Jon, what was Coach K's message to you after the Houston game?
He was just there for me. He was just there for me, like he's been every step of the way. Some of the toughest moments I've had as a head coach up till now, he's the person I go to. Me and him have had a lot of deep conversations, and I want to keep some of that private. But I'm thankful for. Look, nobody can really have the empathy for being in that seat and being in some of those moments, and of course he can. He's lived it his whole life, and so just him coming through and some of the most difficult moments, that moment included, I'll always just be so grateful for him for that.
Well, and he's, seen everything to excruciating losses like he had in 86 against Louisville to other losses in the Final Four. And I remember last year when I was hanging out at your practice, before you guys started, one thing you can always do at Duke is you can always count the banners because there's so many things to look at. At the tail end of the 80s and the early 90s, I know everybody talks about the fact that Duke won back-to-back national titles, but I believe from 86 to 94, Coach K went to 7 Final Fours in a 9-year span. And I feel like that's the thing that nobody talks about, but is one of the most incredible things of really the modern era of college basketball. Do you think that's something that's kind of swept under the carpet a little bit?
100%. No, it's an amazing stat, something we talk about. And, I think you appreciate also in that moment, to consistently get to a Final Four is just it's an incredible thing to do that 7 out of 9 years, and then to do it over multiple decades. But it also makes you appreciate the margin, the small margin between winning and losing at the end of the day. You think about Scotty Thurman's shot, over Tony Lang. It's an inch, or a centimeter maybe. Obviously you think about the Louisville game and it's a block out. And on the flip side, you think about, our Butler game, it's a shot away. You think about the 99 team. You think about, so there's, look, 5 national championships could easily be 8 or 9. It could maybe be 2 or 3, but you put yourself, the thing that I've learned with Coach K, when you think about his whole career, you put yourself in that moment enough times, well, you're going to eventually break through. And so the fact that you go to a Final Four 7 out of 9 years, you are going to break through. You are going to win a couple. And that to me is a special thing.
Jon, what are your thoughts on the roster you've assembled for 25-26?
Well, I love where this landed. Look, that moment of the Houston game, I couldn't tell you where this thing was going to go after that. And in this day and age, I don't know if it's as appreciated as hopefully it will be at the end of the season, but what it means with some of our current players coming back, that's where I want to start. Yeah, I think that's really important. I think in where we want to hype up the transfer portal and the additions that you can get. Well, if Isaiah Evans went somewhere else in the transfer portal, people would be celebrating it like it's the biggest thing in the world. Getting him back as a sophomore, that's a special thing. I could say the same thing for Caleb Foster, for Darren Harris, for Pat Gongba, for Malik Brown. Critical. Malik and Pat at that position for us last year, in addition to Kaman. I mean, I felt like we had 3 starting caliber big guys last year in that spot. And so get those two guys back is huge. And then I love the incoming freshmen that we brought in. They're tough, they're smart, and they have great size, and they're physically ready to play. So I think the biggest thing is we have to start all over. You
Yeah.
have to start all over with your connectivity. How we play may be a little bit different, but overall, it's going to be built on having great toughness and having great connectivity.
John, there was a stretch there in February over a couple of games where Isaiah Evans really displayed his offensive potential. He looked like the type of player who fell out of bed and got 15, 16 points. In a more featured role right now, what do you think could be in store for him during the upcoming year?
Well, I don't think there's any question from anybody about Isaiah's scoring potential. I mean, what he did at the Auburn game, what he did,
Mhm.
like you mentioned, throughout the course of the year, he's wired to score, and we need him to do that. He will do that. To me, I think he gets a chance to show his overall game, the way he impacts winning, besides just his scoring ability. I thought his defense really grew throughout the course of the season. His rebounding, his just making easy plays, the playmaking on offense. He's a player that there's a lot of gravity that he pulls where people always know where he's at, which opens up space for other players. So to me, it's just his overall game. I think he'll be able to show. He will show in a different way than just his past season because I think he's grown. I give him a lot of credit for his always taking coaching and wanting to be better. So I think that's what you'll see from him this year.
Other than Isaiah Evans, which returning players do you think make the biggest jumps for Duke?
Well, I think you got to look at, our front line first and foremost. You think about Malik and Pat. Uh, they're both so unselfish, but they also can score. They also can do a lot more with the ball. They can both shoot from beyond the three. Establishing them will be key for our team. We need those two guys to be just, to me, I'm not trading them with any front line in the country for me. Uh, and then for Caleb and Darren, both in different ways. Caleb, I think, made a unique decision to come back as a junior. He started for us off and on for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But just seeing him around his maturity, his competitiveness, I've been really happy with how he's worked and what he's done. And then Darren, man, shooting is a weapon. It is, and you've seen it. I love shooters, man. You can tell. And Darren's ability to shoot, but his size, his skill, it fits how we play. And I love how he's continued to work and attack all of that. So really, I think all five of them have a big opportunity for our team here.
Yeah, John, I don't know if you remember, but the day I was at practice last
That's
year,
right.
Darren Harris might have made 6 or 8 threes in the half of a scrimmage. So that's another probably name that isn't getting enough attention, but could be a real factor at Cameron Indoor Stadium this year. Well, it wouldn't be Duke if we did not obviously discuss the elite freshmen coming in as well. There's been so many great freshmen to play at Duke. Why at the end of the season will Cam Boozer take a seat at the table in that discussion?
Well, Cam, you know what? Cam is what he does equates to winning. He cares. The best guys that I've coached here care about the right things. They care about making their teammates better. They hold themselves to a high standard. They take coaching, all the time. And then they obviously have a unique ability, and Cam's size and skill. He's an absolute force inside. He has a skill of a guard. He's really a mismatch nightmare waiting to happen. And plus, he's competitive. He's got great feel. So besides that, and besides winning as many games as anybody in high school history, he's really not very good. No, but I think it's those things that separate Cam and why he's going to be just a terrific player for us.
If there was one player, past or present, that Cam Boozer most reminded you of, who would it be?
Well, just from a body perspective, he's like Paulo, from a
Yeah.
body perspective. There's differences in their games for sure. But he has Paulo, when he stepped on the floor, he always knocked people back with how big he was, and I think Cam has the ability to do the same thing. especially at that spot. He's always been the biggest guy on the floor. And now he gets a chance to play with Pat, Malik, where he's not just going to be the biggest guy. So at that spot, I think that's a huge advantage for him of using his size and then having the ball skills of a guard to take advantage of that.
Which other newcomers do you foresee playing obviously key roles in Duke's rotation?
Well, look, I think all of them have the opportunity, right? End of the day, we have 10 scholarship players we recruited to play. And so, I played 10 guys in a Final Four game, so all 10 can play. They all bring different things to the table, though. I mean, Caden Boozer, his ability to pass and make others better is high level. He's led us in assists this summer. He's going to be a really good player that I want him to continue to be more aggressive. I think that's the thing for him. And then our three other guys, and Dame Sarr has got unique potential and ability, and his defensive ability is real. Nick Kamenia is also just has the background of such a great competitor and a winner, connector. He can play with anybody. And then Sebastian Wilkins, to reclassify, we got him late. We are fortunate to get him because he's going to grow in and be a really good player. He's got great bounce. He can make open threes, and he fits that positional size and skill that have been really, really good for us.
Jon, a year ago, I thought you put your team together like a puzzle because the pieces fit so well. And a big key to that was Sion James, who came from Tulane and was a huge part of your team last year that just ripped through the ACC and, went to the Final Four. How do you gauge whether or not you're going to plug in a veteran player out of the transfer portal when you're trying to think about, how you're going to construct your roster?
Well, I think it's this is the way I would put it. If all things are equal, you want talent, right? If all things are equal, you want experience, but you can't always get both. Like there's levels to it, right? The more talented you are, usually those guys aren't 4 or 5 years players. Starting this season, you remove the COVID year, right? And so there wasn't a Sion James there this year in terms of, his situation. And so you're making a decision based on talent, fit, and then experience. And for us, when we were making decisions down the stretch, Dame in particular was the first one. For Dame, I thought his talent and fit outweighed any experience that we could have gotten in the transfer portal. So I think each year can differ. But end of the day, do I wish we had more experience as a group overall? Of course I do. But would I trade what we have and who we have? No way, because to me, it's the best fit, best combination of talent, character, and then obviously the combination of complementing skill sets, which I believe we have.
Jon, I know you referenced your desire to get back to Chicago and have Lou Malnati's here this summer, but I'm also curious what your beverage is going to be, because I looked at your non-conference schedule and I wondered what your beverage was when you were thinking about putting this together. Second day of the season, you're going to play Texas. You're going to come to New York to play Army in what should be a really, really cool game. You also are going to play Kansas at MSG in the Champions Classic, Arkansas and Chicago, on the road at Michigan State on campus, national champion Florida at home in the ACC SEC Challenge, Texas Tech at the Garden, Michigan in D.C. Duke has always played a great schedule, but have you ever been a part of a non-conference schedule like the one you're about to endure?
No. And, if you have me on next year this time, maybe I'll tell you that I'm, the dumbest guy you've ever met doing what we're doing. I really think it comes down to it's not the personal pride in wanting your record to be as good as possible. Actually, one of the teams we're playing is Bill Self in Kansas. And I heard Coach Self talk about this with you of just, really it's about being your most prepared and ready for making a run at the end of the season. I thought it was a great point that he made. That's the purpose behind every decision we made with that schedule. We could play some of those neutral site games and maybe not play as good of an opponent. But end of the day, going through what we went through last year, even including the final game,
Yeah.
that let us expose our guys to as much as possible. We'll grow from it. We'll be tough. Do I want to be undefeated? And yeah, of course. That's not the reality of today's day and age in college basketball, especially with the young team. So I want to find out what we're made of, what we have to work on, and then obviously at a certain point you have to win games. Of course, you want to be in the tournament, you want to have a good seed, but the most important thing is to be ready. Plus, I believe it's what our players want. I
Yeah.
believe it's what our fans want. And I think it's also great for the game at the same
Yeah.
time to have some of these high profile games early in the season.
The Michigan game is going to be in Washington, D.C. in February. A year ago, you played against Illinois at Madison Square Garden in February. Is this something you want to do moving forward on an annual basis to kind of change up the routine in the middle of the season?
Yeah, in a perfect world, we get a chance to do it. I think it's with our league going to 18 conference games. I felt with 20 conference games, you need to break up a little bit of the monotony of
Yeah.
just preparing for the same opponents, road game, home game, when you hope you can make a run where you're playing 9 games in a neutral site game. So that was the
Yeah.
purpose of doing it. And then you also have to turn the page quick and prepare for somebody you haven't seen as much. So I like that concept. Obviously, Michigan will be a heck of an opponent, big time team. Dusty's a great coach, and it'll be in a really good neutral site game. So that's our goal, is to continue to do it, but it has to fit. It just has to fit the right time and the right opponent and venue.
Now, speaking of venues, I know this is one that's obviously very near and dear to your heart because you've referenced your affinity for your hometown, Chicago, many times in this talk. What is it going to be like for you emotionally to go home for Thanksgiving and play at the United Center against Arkansas in prime time on CBS on Thanksgiving night?
Yeah, I think that'll be just a really special game. And it's an honor to play, and coach against Coach Cal and
Yeah.
Arkansas and, what they're doing down there. Obviously, they're really talented. But to be back in Chicago Thanksgiving Day, that's really the first thing I heard. And I think I said yes before I even knew the rest of it. And so then, of course, Coach Cal and their program, we knew it was going to be somebody really good once you hear his name. So for me, to put our team in different situations, I think we're following the Cowboys and the Chiefs right after.
Yeah.
I think we come on right after, so that's pretty cool. I think a few people will be tuning in, and maybe one of the most watched games in a long time in college basketball. So what an opportunity for our guys to do that, and where could you be any better than Chicago? Hopefully we get some Illuminatis before, after, and if we could get a win, there would be even sweeter.
It all goes back to Lou Malnati's for John, who's 180 pounds or maybe 175 after he works out the next time. But I'm asking a lot of coaches this because it fascinates me. Coaches always stew so much more over tough losses than they celebrate great wins. I know you've only been a head coach for 3 years, so I want to throw your assistant coaching days in the mix as well to get a little bit broader perspective. Give me one difficult loss aside from the Houston game that really resonates with you, and give me also one memorable win that you really always seem to hold in high regard.
I felt like we had such a special group in 18-19 as well, and you're winning with under a minute to go in an Elite Eight game, and we lost to Michigan State. Give them all the credit in the world. But I remember walking off the floor with Trey Jones, and Trey for me is like, we have a special relationship still to this day. He's like family to me, and I just remember putting my arm around him, and he just couldn't fathom. He felt and I felt too, because of our team and the group that we had. We could win the whole thing, and that was a really difficult loss. And then Trey comes back the next year. We have another really good group, and then COVID happens. And I think that knowing Trey Jones, I'm not betting against him and our team. with the run we could have made that year as well. But that was a really difficult loss. I think also made you appreciate just how difficult Elite Eight games are. That same category was Kansas the year before. We lost in overtime, and we're winning by 3 with under a minute to go.
Yes.
And so again, we've had more great moments than the tough moments, but you put yourself in that position to be disappointed, to have your heart broken. Those are 2 that stand out to me. And then I think about it's going to maybe be a strange one for you, but I'm going to give you 2, even though you asked for 1. Beating Texas Tech in the Sweet 16 in 2022 with Paulo Banchero and those guys. We came out and they punched us in the face right away and called a timeout. I think we were down 6-0 right away, just regrouped and just battled back. That was a big deal. And then as a head coach, for us going to a Final Four this past year and beating Alabama, was it just a great necessary step for me, for our program. And that's something special that we'll cherish.
So let's wrap on this. What has to happen for Duke yet again to be in a similar position to go to a Final Four and compete for a national championship in 2026?
For me, it's really simple. I think finding that toughness, that I think clearly jumped off the page when you watch this last year can mean a lot of different things, right? But it means we played hard and played with great effort, great physicality. That's going to be important for us to develop. And then great, especially these days, the number one thing, great connectivity, finding and having guys that play for each other, not for statistics, but really have the ability to think about winning as much as possible and all the time. And it's a great challenge. I think we got the right guys to do it. And I really believe that we can do something special this year. But it's going to be those 2 things that give us the opportunity to be in the position you talked about.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun to cover. Jon, appreciate a couple of minutes. Know you're very, very busy every day on the calendar. Enjoy the trip home to Chicago. And as always, look forward to staying connected along the way.
Jon, thank you. Remember, we sleep in August for a week. All right.
Jon Scheyer is changing the tagline. But, you got to tip your cap to somebody who can eat a whole pie at Lou Malnati's and not gain any weight. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this is Inside College Basketball Now.